Sea Devil?
Oh, I know the Sea Devil's not ready yet. A Silurian, I'm just gonna fill in for them for the time being for this sketch.
Oh, sorry. Silurian. What are you doing, Silurian? Out of batteries, damn it.
Oh, well, I'm just filling in for the Sea Devil, as I just said.
Oh, okay. So, what was the Sea Devil supposed to be doing?
Oh, the Sea Devil was going to use this sword to kill a lot of villagers in this scene because it didn't like them.
And are you killing all these people in the Sea Devil's place, Silurian?
Um, no, I'm not gonna kill anyone. I'm just gonna stand here and talk to you until the Sea Devil's ready, and then you guys can do the scene properly.
Oh, okay, good. Good. Okay. Don't then. Okay. Cool.
Oh, it appears that the Sea Devil is now ready. Um, okay, so I'll just I'll go now, and it can come in.
Okay. Right. Okay. You just you do your thing, mate.
Right, I'll leave the sword here. Yeah, that's right. See ya.
Bye. Yes.
Here he comes now.
Okay. Here comes the Sea Devil. Right then. Sea Devil. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who: Legend of the Sea Devils, the 2022 Doctor Who Easter special, and the second of the three Series 13, Season 39 Flux specials airing in 2022, which will round off the 13th Doctor's era. So this is her penultimate episode. This episode also sees the return of the Sea Devils, introduced in 1972's The Sea Devils, starring John Pertwee's third Doctor, and only appearing once more on television in 1985's Warriors of the Deep, starring Peter Davison's fifth Doctor. So technically, outside of cameos and flashbacks, like the Atraxes archive footage of this 1972 story in the 11th Hour, where we briefly see a Sea Devil from the 72 story, briefly in that. Besides those, this is technically the third Sea Devil story, and not including cameos and stories featuring Madame Vastra, this is the fifth Homo Reptilia story, the one that mostly about them. The fifth focused on a Homo Reptilia species, being the Sea Devils, the Silurians, the Merca, etc. So, outside of cameos and guest appearances throughout the 11th Doctor's era and the Madame Vastra stories in the case of the Silurians. And of course, as focus just the TV stories. I'm not even sure how many stories in expanded media the Sea Devils got. I know the Silurians have got a couple of Big Finish audios. This episode's also a pirate story, so we're following on from the Smugglers and the Curse of the Black Spot, and I guess also the Space Pirates and the Pirate Planet as being a pirate story. And apart from the Pirate Planet, pirate stories in Doctor Who haven't been that great. The Smugglers is alright. The Space Pirates is the worst story ever made, in my opinion. And the Curse of the Black Spots, and the Curse of the Black Spot's also okay. It's enjoyable. It's probably the most traditional of the pirate stories. So, Legend of the Sea Devils. This story has quite a lot of promise. It's the 13th Doctor's penultimate story. It sees the return of the Sea Devils. It's going to continue the 13th Doctor and Yaz's relationship as explored a bit in Eve of the Daleks, the previous episode, and built upon previously during Flux and hinted at during the end of Series 12. It's also going to see historical character Madame Ching, as this story is about Chinese pirates set in 19th century China. And it's going to be a swashbuckling adventure. So there's a whole lot of exciting elements to look forward to for this story. Unfortunately, this story does not match those expectations. Yeah, it kind of falls into that pirate story curse Mr. TARDIS mentions in his review, as it's not that great. I would still put it above the other pirate stories besides the Pirate Planet. That's still the best one. But yeah, this is not that amazing, and it's one of the weaker pre-regeneration stories, just like the Smugglers. Um, Ironic. But yeah, this one's not that great. I'm not going to say it's outright awful, but it's probably good at best. The plot of this episode sees the 13th Doctor, Yaz, and Dan arrive in 19th century China, where the pirate queen, Madame Ching, has recently destroyed part of a statue in order to get something from it to learn the location of the treasure of the lost ship Delamar. I believe that's the name of the ship. So she can find the treasure to go and pay some guys to get her crew back, including her two young sons. However, when she unearths this piece that would lead her to find the ship, the Delamar, she accidentally releases a demon creature that had been encased in the statue for all of for the past couple of centuries. That being the leader Sea Devil, played by Craig Ellis. Great to have Craig Ellis, who played Carvanista in the previous series, and also Dan's friend in the introducing Dan teaser at the end of Revolution of the Daleks. Great to have him back as the leader Sea Devil. The opening of this episode is really great, really greatly built with the atmosphere, the villagers running away, and Madame Ching coming to steal part of the statue, the Sea Devil escaping from the statue, and the stuff with Dan, Yaz, and the Doctor is nicely handled on the beach as well. But once we get to see the Sea Devil attack the village and the Doctor and co turn up, my biggest issue with this episode arises. The editing in the action scenes. In fact, the editing full stop in this episode. I'm not sure what happened, but the editing and some of the cinematography in this episode suck. Like, this is almost Quantum of Solace, the James Bond film levels of bad editing. Almost. But yeah, the action scenes look absolutely hacked together. I know action scenes sometimes look like this in film and TV, but there are some really good uses of it when they're done right, and this is not one of those cases. Again, it's not awful. Like, it's not as bad as some others, but it's definitely noticeably hacked and bad, and it just looks awkward, especially with these shots of the Sea Devil attacking the villagers, and it doesn't flow. The shots don't match up, and it doesn't quite work. I understand they were filming it under pandemic conditions, so they couldn't get the Sea Devil too close to the people, but the shots still look hokey regardless. That's just some of the staging, and that's probably due to how quick the shots are. Because of how quick the shots are, we can't really see what's going on very well, and that isn't helped by the cut editing. It doesn't really work. Another major issue with the editing is that I don't think the 50-minute, or rather 48-minute runtime of this episode, because it's only around roughly 50 minutes, just under 50 minutes, so about the length of an average 13th Doctor era story, it feels like there's some stuff missing. Like when the Doctor, Yaz, and Dan trap the Sea Devil in a net, it feels like, where did the net come from? Did they just see it? Did they used to use it to their advantage? Did they come up with a plan? Some bits of character motivation from the Sea Devils, kind of like just kind of very vague. Like they want to take over the planet and they're going to be really villainous about it. And so they do this whole sciencey stuff. I don't quite understand it, but there's some sciencey stuff that's talked about. And then, yeah, that's basically it. That's the Sea Devil's motivation. It's just, this feels like there's, especially in the editing and some parts of this plot, that just feels like there's bits missing. Like there could have been maybe some more stuff, or maybe we could have paced out the action, slowed it down a bit, and so forth. And the episode overall, pacing wise, feels rushed. And I think the issue was this was supposed to be the regeneration story. Before the Centenary special was commissioned by the BBC, this was supposed to be the big regeneration episode. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly what would have been the big regeneration. Maybe something that happens towards the end of the story could have been what could have been the cause of the 13th Doctor's regeneration. That all being sliced by that sword, with the Sea Devil tech in it that causes people to have skin rash or something. I don't know exactly what it was. I don't think the Sea Devils needed that. A sword kills people pretty easily without it. Also interesting that they don't have their disc sort of gun things that they had. That was in the design of the new Sea Devils, the artwork, the character designs, but they ultimately dropped it in favor of having the laser sword. And honestly, I think they could have dropped the laser. I think it could have been fine with just a sword. Back to the pacing. Yeah, I think because this was supposed to be the regeneration story, it lost the whole stuff to do with the regeneration, so it can be saved for the next story, and also stuff about Timeless Child arc would have been at the end of Flux. When the Centenary came along, Flux's ending got changed, and this one lost 10 minutes of runtime, or 10 minutes in the script. Or this episode did have had a change of ending, and they either didn't fill in some spots, or they just did. If they did write it to be a 60-minute episode, stuff got cut out. And I honestly think this one was written, even with the Centenary special added, this one might have been rewritten. The ending would have been rewritten. Some stuff might have been rewritten, but ultimately it was cut down to 50 minutes, or 48 minutes rather, and 10 minutes was lost. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they had filmed the regeneration scenes and they just cut it so that they could have it in the next story. I really want to know what went down with the behind the scenes, because there was a great behind the scenes feature about the ship and filming on it, and it looked really cool. And so I really want to know why this episode got cut to 50 minutes or 48 minutes, and why some bits are edited and shot the way they are. Yeah, it's under pandemic conditions, but it still looks incredibly shoddy. It's shoddy, and compared to the previous 7 episodes, even if with lots of messy visual effects in some of them, they still at least looked decent on a cinematography and editing level for the most parts, especially with the Daleks, which was done on a really small budget. It was the budget saving episode. And yet, all 7 of those, visually, cinematography, and editing, were pretty damn good. Even the episodes that were just 50 minutes still flowed pretty well at 50 minutes, even if you could have taken some bits out and changed stuff around. At least it kind of flowed well at 50 minutes. This one needed at least a couple more minutes just to pan out the action scene, so it doesn't feel so snappy, so quick, and so rushed. And I feel that's my biggest issue. That's my second biggest issue with the story, is that it feels too short. It's too short. There should have been more time for the action, and there should have been more time for the plot. And there does feel like there isn't much of a plot this time around. It's not even that much of a swashbuckling adventure. It's just swashbuckling. It's not that exciting. So the actual plot that we do get in the story, I have been meandering from this point. Sorry about that. So after the Sea Devil was released, he goes to his crew, or they rescue him, and there's a really silly effect where he jumps from the ground onto the ship And considering he can teleport, they didn't have to include that. Then he gets his crew together and they release this underwater beast, and they go to try and find this gemstone so that they can put their science altering plan into action, where they plan to manipulate the earth to try and make it more habitable for sea devils and kill off all the humans, get rid of all the land, and just make Earth an aquatic planet. So the Doctor and Yaz try to go and find the lost ship Delamar to try and find out what's going on and to try and retrieve the treasure, whilst Dan and this local boy whose father was killed by a sea devil and they were protecting the statue, they go to try and chase down Madame Ching on her ship and eventually get captured by her, but manage to bargain their ways to be crew members. And they are soon cornered by the sea creature, which has also brought the TARDIS to the Sea Devils. After the Doctor and Yaz realise that the Sea Devils attacked this ship by a sailor called Ji Hun and took the ship from him, they stole his ship and modified it to be theirs, and they kept Ji Hun in stasis as Ji Hun was trying to protect his crew from the Sea Devil. Though it does make it look like he is initially in league with them to begin with, but we then find out he's just trying to protect his crew. They rescue Ji-hun, they get on board Madame Ching's ship. The Sea Devil then gets the gemstone, which turns out to be this thing passed down to a boy on lands through his family, and he's a descendant of one of Ji-hun's crew members. And then the Sea Devil takes him, and then they all go back onto the Sea Devil ship to fight Sea Devils and then stop the main Sea Devil from unleashing his plan, which they do. And that's really about it from the story. Not really an awful lot of plot, which is fine. Eve of the Daleks didn't have an awful lot of plot either. But where that episode made up with was how easy it was to follow that episode. And whilst this one's not difficult to follow, it just feels like there is that little bit of spark missing from the episode. It's not as interesting or as engaging to follow. The best stuff mainly comes with character interaction, specifically the 13th Doctor and Yaz, and occasionally maybe some of the other characters as well. This 13th Doctor Yaz interactions are probably the highlight of the episode, not just the continuation of the Doctor Yaz relationship, but because Jodie Whittaker and Mandy McGill have such a good chemistry by this point that they just are able to bounce off each other really, really well, whatever they're talking about. But it is the romantic relationship stuff that they talk about, especially at the end, where it does feel like it's where the episode has its heart is in that place. Yeah, it's probably this whole arc about 13 and this relationship is mainly due to the fans wanting Phasmin to be a thing, and as of Eve of the Daleks, right, it's definitely a thing. It was subtext in the last couple of episodes. Now it's at the forefront of these characters' relationships in these episodes. And to be honest, it is quite nice. It's really nice, and it's nicely handled in the episode, and well built up, though some of the things 13 says about Yaz, the character hasn't quite earned some of those statements like, oh, if I was going to be with anyone, it'd be you. You're like the greatest person I've ever known. And that's saying something because I've known a lot of great people. Yeah, some of those, it's a bit like with Clara, where the writer seems to love the character, but the audience not so much, or at least not the entire audience. Yeah, you're going to get those fans where like, oh yeah, I like this character. Yeah, I'm not so keen on the same character. It's because Clara's not that popular with the most of the fandom. She does have her fans out there, Jean-Luc Harry from Universals, for example, but not everybody. I mean, yeah, obviously not everybody, but she's one of the less popular companions, especially of the new series. And whilst Yasmin probably doesn't have as much of a detractors in terms of the general fans, not my doctors not included, because they're scum, but like Series 7 Clara, she wasn't really as developed in Series 11 or parts of 12. And it's only really recently that she started to bloom a bit like Clara in Series 8, but handled a bit better. I also like that Dan gets a moment with Di following the events of the last episode of Flux, where she sort of blames him for some of what went down, or at the very least not turning up when they were supposed to meet. Or at the very least, they're talking with each other over the phone, which was nice. It was a nice moment where they got to talk with each other again. Speaking of Dan, this is the first episode of the series where I haven't been as excited to see John Bishop on screen as I did with the previous 7 episodes. I wasn't as excited whilst watching the episodes. I was enjoying Dan as much as I did in those previous 7 episodes. Not due to John Bishop or anything. I think just the character is kind of hampered by both the Doctor Yaz stuff, the Sea Devil stuff, and the guest character stuff. And Dan, whilst doesn't get lost in the mix, he kind of does get not so much sidelined, but he doesn't get as much focus as the other characters. He teams up with the boy who is the son of the guy protecting the statue, and they work there with Madame Ching for a bit. But he's mostly there just to chat and to look silly in a pirate outfit, which does in a more Western pirate outfit that wouldn't match the the Chinese culture and setting, as opposed to the Doctor and Yaz's costumes, which are looking really great. Especially like how we get a change of costume from the 13th Doctor for like the first time, not including when the 13th Doctor played the role of the fugitive Doctor in Once Upon a Time, and the time embodiment in the Vanquishers. Besides that, when they had a different coat, the 13th Doctor's costume hasn't really changed that much. So, like with Tom Baker and the Talons of Wang Chang, it's nice to see them wearing something a bit quite different as opposed to their usual wear. So, there's other examples out there, but Talons of Wang Chang's a pretty good example. As Tom Baker wears almost very little similar to his usual costume in that episode. He doesn't even have the scarf. So it's similar to Jodie's costume in this one, where it's pretty much nothing from her main costume has passed over here. I don't have an awful lot to say about the rest of the plot. Character wise, Ji Hun's a pretty interesting character, a pretty fun character, but there isn't a huge amount to him. And Madame Ching is probably the weakest written guest historical character of not just the Chibnall era, but one of the weakest of the revised series. As whilst we get to know a little bit about her, we don't really know that much. Whilst it's good for the Doctor not to spout the first page of the first couple paragraphs of the Wikipedia page to the audience when talking about her, at the same time, we don't actually learn that much about the character themselves. And considering this is a Chinese pirate depicted in a British television series, it would be good for the British audience or the Western audiences, like in America and places, or English-speaking audiences, like in Australia, who may not know that much about this personage, unless you've like read a book or online about the person. But to the general British public, this is not like this is like Blackbeard or someone. This is someone from the other side of the world. So it'd be good to learn a bit more about them, as opposed to say, oh, this person's called Madame Ching, and she's a pirate queen, and and her crew are being held captive, and that's why they're not here. Again, works around COVID restrictions, and she has to try and save them and her own sons from these other people by getting this treasure, and that's her motivation for finding the treasure in this story. But we don't really learn much about the person, the historical figure themselves. Honestly, you could have swapped this with a completely fictional character like Ji Hun, and it wouldn't have changed anything. Like, yeah, absolutely nothing. Ji Hun is a completely fictional character, and I know as much about him as I do about Madame Ching. So, if Madame Ching was just a completely new character, it would not have changed anything in this episode, as opposed to some of the previous historical characters who appeared in stories. Even Noreen India Khan and Ada Lovelace, or Ada Gordon, before she got married. Even we kind of knew a little bit about them from what the Doctor said. Yeah, again, Wikipedia first paragraph style dialogue, but at least we got to know what they were about, even if they didn't do an awful lot in the episode. And then we've had so many great historical characters especially in this era. Rosa Parks, James the First/Sixth, First England, Sixth Scotland, Nikola Tesla, almost all of the characters in The Haunting of Villa Diodati, Mary Seacole, but Madame Ching doesn't seem to be on the same level as most of those. Even Ada and Nor had more to, well, not more to do, but they had more stuff about them revealed in or discussed in the episode, even if their presence in the episodes weren't as necessary as, or at least, or not so much necessary, but not as big or as important as some of the other ones. The actress does a really good job, as does the guy playing. Oh, now I've forgotten his name. It's the pirate I was just talking about. The guy, Chi Hun. Ji Hun. Both the actors do really well in their roles, but ultimately the characters aren't. Well, I liked Chi Hun mainly due to the actor's performance of the character, but neither of them are really expanded upon. The other boy, he's all right as well. He's got some good moments, and the actor does him pretty well, as does the actor playing his father. But they don't really do that much for me. They're just kind of they're there, but they're interest. They're all right. They're okay, but they're just there. As for the Sea Devils, well, this is the story where they get the most focus because even in their introductory story, the Master was still pretty much the main focus, and they were kind of overshadowed. Plus, the story was partly a retread of the Silurians, though to be fair, most of the following Silurian and Sea Devil stories are kind of retreads elements of that original story. See the Hungry Earth and Cold Blood for an even bigger comparison. But yeah, the Sea Devils in that story, they were still a little bit sidelined for the Master, even towards the end. And then Warriors of the Deep, they were basically grunts for the Silurians, and the Silurians were basically kind of acting like the Sea Devils in this story, where right, we're not even prepared to negotiate like we were in the previous two stories. We were actually thought about negotiating. Maybe there's some rogue younger element in there who doesn't want to negotiate and just going to go straight to war. Again, Hungry Earth and Cold Blood manages to capture these elements really well. Um, younger ones, or heck, sometimes older ones. One group wants to go to war whilst the other wants to negotiate, and there's a bit of an inner conflict between the groups, and same with the humans as well. Warriors of the Deep, Silurians and Sea Devils like, nah, forget all that. We're going to go straight to killing people. And it feels like the Sea Devils in this story do the exact same thing. They're like, nah, we're not even going to negotiate. We're just going to go, right, let's turn the world aquatic. I wonder what the Silurians would have thought of that plan. But yeah, the Sea Devils just want to go, right, we don't even have that. We don't even have the honor from before. We're just going to go straight to trying to turn the world aquatic. And yeah, the Sea Devils in this one are they're they're okay, really written, but I don't think they're that great. The costumes look great, and they recapture how they looked in 1972 and 1984, though with a updated costume and to match the Chinese and 18th century Chinese, 19th century, early 1800s Chinese culture and how they dressed then, matched them. Though I'm not so hot on the kind of a light thing which sort of allows a sea devil to speak. And whilst the head sculptures look great and manage to recapture the older sea devils, the I don't think they quite that would. I think it's like with the Dradoon, who's got the animatronics in the facials, but when they're matching it up with the audio from the creatures, it doesn't quite work. And sometimes the face is CG'd rather than animatronic, and it doesn't quite fit as well. Maybe it was to make up like the Silurians, matching the dialogue and the movements would have been a bit better. Or maybe if the characters didn't talk as the Sea Devil leader didn't talk as much. But it is odd that the mouth isn't able to match the actual vocals of the character speaking, and it kind of comes across as half baked. You've got a great costume that reminiscent of the '70s version, but on the other hand, it doesn't quite. It's not. It doesn't quite work 100%. Honestly, if you didn't have them talking, it would probably be better. Just the face and maybe some the eye expression, and as we saw in the teaser from the end of Eve of the Daleks, that was great. But yeah, with the talking, it doesn't quite fit as well, which is a shame. I do really like the updated design. it's just the matching the voice with what was going, what it was the face was doing. That was the issue. Um, Not much else to say apart from some of the CGI in this episode looks a bit hokey as well, like with the editing. At least it's not as much of a CGI fest as the Azar Shazim episodes of Flux, in terms of like it's like on screen obvious CG or green screen, but there is quite a bit of obvious CG in this episode. And again, pandemic restrictions, I know, but yeah, some of the visual effects are still really obvious. I think I mentioned this in my reaction that the Chibnall era has had more noticeable visual CGI effects. Even pre-pandemic, there's been a lot, and they've been very obvious. Not all of them, but quite a few have been obviously CG'd, and it doesn't quite work as well. And then it got even more so during pandemic filming wise for Flux and the specials following the following specials. And I think this one, alongside the Azure Shazim episodes of Flux, showed it off probably the most in terms of the series 13 episodes. But some of the CG does look pretty good, though. Not all of it. Some of it looks downright embarrassing, like that Sea Devil popping from the ground to the ship I mentioned earlier. It looks like something from Mario Bros. The Mario Brothers game, and some people have even done the edit with the sound effect from it going boing. It looks really silly. I know this is Doctor Who, and I know this is supposed to be the fun, swashbuckling, adventurous penultimate episode of the 13th Doctor's era featuring pirates and sea devils, but yeek, that effect looked embarrassing. Oh yeah, where did that sea monster creature go off at the end of the story? It finds Madame Ching's ship and it just disappears. That was actually a really cool creature design, and that was really one of the better uses of CGI in this episode, alongside the TARDIS underwater. That was all really great, but where did it go? What happened to it after it found the ship? Is it still out there at the bottom of the sea? Did it get blown up with the sea? Actually, the Sea Devil base didn't get blown up. Did it get trapped in the Sea Devil base? What happened to it? I know it survived the cannon shots thrown at it by Madame Ching's ship, but yeah, after that, vanished. Unless it's going to turn up in the Centenary special, this is going to be a very, very big loose end for this episode. Again, maybe if we had another 10 minutes, we could have found out what happened to it. Maybe it went to go off and live in an alcove or live peacefully all of its life, like the Zygon Skiritson creature went off to live back in Loch Ness and become the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, this episode really needed to be another 10 minutes. And I'm not really a fan of the fact that a special episode is shorter than, well, even the Daleks is about 57, 58, but it's roughly an average of roughly 60, roughly 55, 60 minutes in the 60 minutes time slot on BBC One. I think this one should have been 60 minutes, and it could have used the extra 10 to 12, 13 to calm down the pace, slow down the story, iron out the editing, make the action look more cohesive in pacing, explore the Sea Devils plan and motivations a bit more, get to know more about the supporting characters, maybe a few more additional calm moments with the Doctor and Yaz, maybe some moments with Dan, and also tell us where the heck that giant creature went. And just slow the episode down and give us a tad bit more than what we got. Just a little bit, of stuff. Even if it's just more dialogue, more exposition, just something to kind of fill in a hole that's left. And I think that hole is a 10 minutes long hole. At least the Centenary special is going to be feature length, so that'll hopefully, at the very least, be 70 to 75 minutes. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping for around 90 minutes, maybe 80 to 85, but fingers crossed for a 90-minute special. Maybe even longer if we're lucky. So, anyway, Legend of the Sea Devils. Whilst there's some good elements in this story, it's mostly just a fun, enjoyable, good story. But there's not a huge amount going for it. And whilst there's some good elements to it, it's ultimately the biggest disappointment of this side of the 13th Doctor's era. Or at least on the first time during Survivors of the Flux kind of went down in opinion more on later viewings afterwards. On first viewing, I thought it was really good. On later viewings, I thought, okay, this one doesn't quite work as well now. This one was my biggest disappointment on watching the episode since Orphan 55, excluding the Timeless Child reveal in the Timeless Children, of course. But even then, it was after the episode finished that I started thinking about it more and how it worked / didn't work in the story. So yeah, this is really the least enjoyable story since Orphan 55 on a first viewing basis. On rewatch basis, some of the other stories have lowered down, such as the series 12 finale and Survivors of the Flux. But yeah, this one's still one of the weaker episodes of Jodie Whittaker's era, and that is a massive, massive shame. Because this one was going to be so great, and ultimately it just came down to a bit of a disappointment. Hala Wang does her best with the directing, but the final execution of the story looks really, really hokey, especially in the editing during the action scenes and quite a bit of the cinematography as well. And there feels like there's a bit of the story missing. Same with Ella Road on co-writing the story. She does her best, but ultimately the story doesn't quite work. And because there is, as I mentioned, there's something missing, and I believe another 10 or so minutes, and we could have had a few more stuff about the characters and a few more motivations for the Sea Devils, what they're doing, and also find out where that monster creature went. And I think we could have gotten a more satisfactory episode overall. But as it stands, I will be giving Legend of the Sea Devils a 6 out of 10. I was going to give it a 7 initially, but because it just feels like this one, in really most of the issues with this story that could have been fixed could have been on an editing standpoint in terms of the in the action scenes, and another 10 minutes for the character stuff scenes and the plot wise as well. I think, yeah, better editing and, in some places, cinematography, and another 10 or so minutes. So it actually is a near 60-minute special, like the other specials, if at shortest. At shortest, they're just under 60 minutes. And I feel like another 10 minutes, and we could have had at least a better story. As it stands, The Legend of the Sea Devils is currently the weaker of the two out of the first two specials of Series 13, though we'll see how the Centenary special fares, and the weakest of the 4 13th Doctor specials so far. It's the second weakest episode out of the broadcast 8 that were produced in the Series 13 block. I do take it above Survivors of the Flux, though. And I probably would say it's one of the weaker episodes of the 13th Doctor's era overall. It's not the weakest. I'm still going to put Orphan 55 at the bottom. The Series 12 finale, Survivors of the Flux, as I mentioned. Strangled Conundrum. Maybe, did I give Arachnid UK a 6 out of 10? Maybe that. But yeah, this one is quite disappointing, which is a shame. It had so many good elements going for it. It looked so great from the trailer, which came out 2 weeks before the episode aired. But still, it looks really great, and it started off really great, and then ultimately it just didn't quite live up to the expectations. And I know a lot of people have kind of felt that way about the Chibnall era as a whole, or parts of it at least. In my case, it's this episode and a few others I briefly talked about, and some I haven't talked about. But I think most of 13.0 is better than this, including the rest of Flux. and the other 3 specials, and most of series 11 and 12. Oh, that's a shame. I was really looking forward to this. And also, in terms of penultimate Doctor stories, yeah, this one's one of the weaker ones as well. The first 3 Doctors didn't really have very great penultimate Doctor stories. Got better with 4. 5 was great. Really liked the 5th Doctor's penultimate story. 6 depends whether you count as Revelation of the Daleks or Trial of the Time Lord, Ultimate Foe, or Terror of the Vervoids. I would say Terror of the Vervoids. That was a fun run around. Enjoyed it, but it's not that great. Then 7, technically it's Survival for TV stories, or Dimensions in Time. Survival's amazing. Dimensions in Time is not. 8th Doctor got to skip. For these new series, I think Boomtown is the only one I would put lower than this episode, but I might even have to reevaluate that one at some point. And then for the new series Doctors, the penultimate episodes have been some of their absolute best. Waters of Mars, Day of the Doctor, World Enough in Time and the Doctor Falls. Outstanding episodes in their Doctor's eras. Day of the Doctor is even my personal favourite story of all time, and World Enough in Time Doctor Falls is my second favourite of Capaldi's run. And Waters of Mars is up there in Tennant's. And yeah, it feels like after those 3 colossally brilliant penultimate stories, this one's gone back to more like the first 3 Doctors quality stories. Or I think, again, I'd have to reevaluate. Again, I'm going to have to reevaluate Boomtown at some point. But yeah, this one is definitely one of the weaker ones, which is a massive shame. Let's hope then that the Centenary special can spin it around and become one of the absolute best in the best regeneration stories of the show, and one of the best specials and one of the best episodes of 13's run. Let's hope as 13's final adventure looms over us, coming within a couple months' time, we can send her off on a really strong note. Please? Anyway, so that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.